The CEO hasn't eaten anything for 3 days. His hand trembled as he pushed away the third plate of exquisitely prepared food, his eyes narrowing with disappointment. The whispers among the kitchen staff grew louder. Dan Wilson, the CEO of Wilson Enterprises, one of the country's most powerful corporations, had announced something unprecedented: a $100 million reward to find a chef who could satisfy his palate. But 3 days had passed, and nothing had touched his lips. "I'm not interested in appearances or reputation," Dan announced, his voice echoing through the mansion's grand dining room. "I want something that speaks to me, something real." "Is that too much to ask for $100 million? The head chef, Mary Chambers, stood with her shoulders squared, her reputation as the country's most celebrated culinary artist on the line. With 20 years of experience and stars adorning every restaurant she'd ever touched, she couldn't comprehend how her creations were being dismissed without even a taste. "Mr. Wilson, I assure you what I've prepared today will change everything," Mary declared, her confidence unwavering despite the previous failures. 3 masterpieces, each more magnificent than the last. If you've ever witnessed true culinary artistry, you know the anticipation it creates. The room held its breath as the first dish was presented, a symphony of colors and textures, truffles worth thousands adorning the plate like precious jewels. Dan Wilson merely glanced at it, then shook his head. "Next," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. Mary's smile faltered, but only for a moment. "The second dish is my signature creation. It has brought tears to the eyes of food critics worldwide. The sauce alone took 3 days to perfect." The aroma filled the room as the silver cover was lifted. Dan leaned forward, inhaling deeply. For a moment, hope flickered in Mary's eyes. Then, without warning, he set down his chopsticks without taking a single bite. "Next," he repeated, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "What would make you refuse to eat for 3 days? Let us know in the comments below." Mary's hand trembled slightly as she signaled for the final dish. Her masterpiece, the culmination of her life's work. A dish so complex and revolutionary it had taken her entire career to perfect. "This," she announced with theatrical flair, "is culinary innovation that has never been attempted before. A fusion of techniques that—" Dan didn't wait for her to finish. In one swift motion, he grabbed the edge of the plate and dumped its contents directly into the trash bin beside the table. The room fell silent, even the servers freezing in place. "Ms. Chambers," Dan said quietly, each word precise and cutting, "I've given you 3 chances, 3 opportunities to show me why you're considered the best. And you've failed spectacularly each time." He stood, towering over the table. "If you cannot present me with something I find worthy by the end of today, you will never cook professionally again. I will personally see to it." The threat hung in the air like a guillotine blade. With his influence, Dan Wilson could indeed end careers with a single phone call. "You have 2 hours, he added, glancing at his watch. "Make them count." Mary rushed back to the kitchen, her face flushed with humiliation and panic. The entire kitchen staff scattered like startled birds as she burst through the door. "Everything! Try everything!" she shouted, her composure completely shattered. "Molecular gastronomy, classical French, avant-garde Japanese fusion. I want every technique, every ingredient we have at our disposal." The kitchen erupted into frenzied activity. Chefs chopped, seared, and assembled with desperate intensity. Exotic ingredients were rushed in from specialty suppliers across the city. No expense was spared, no technique too complicated or time-consuming to attempt. As the minutes ticked by, each creation was rejected by Mary herself before it could even reach Dan. "Not good enough," she kept saying, pushing plates away, her standards rising with her panic. In the corner of the vast kitchen, largely unnoticed by the chaos, stood Jennifer Mitchell. For 3 years she had worked as a dishwasher, quietly observing the chefs, occasionally helping with basic prep work when allowed. 25 years old with dreams bigger than her paycheck, she had been saving every penny to attend culinary school someday. Jennifer watched the pandemonium unfold, her mind racing. Something about this situation felt wrong, misaligned. The desperate attempts at complexity and innovation seemed to be missing the point entirely. With 45 minutes remaining, Mary collapsed into a chair, her head in her hands. "It's impossible," she whispered. "He doesn't want food. He wants to humiliate me." Jennifer stepped forward, her heart pounding. "Miss Chambers," she said quietly, "I'd like to try." The kitchen fell silent as all eyes turned to the dishwasher. Mary looked up, her expression shifting from despair to disbelief to amusement. "You? The dishwasher?" "Yes," Jennifer replied simply. "I believe I can make something Mr. Wilson will eat." Laughter erupted from several corners of the kitchen. Michael Holmes, Mary's sous chef, stepped forward with a sneer. "Go back to your station, girl. This isn't amateur hour. What could you possibly make that we haven't tried?" Robert Brown, the pastry chef, added with a dismissive wave. Mary studied Jennifer for a long moment, then shrugged. "Why not? We're doomed anyway." She gestured to the cooking stations. "Be my guest. Show us this miracle dish." Jennifer moved to the cooking station with calm determination. Her hands didn't shake as she reached for a knife. Her movements precise despite the pressure of dozens of eyes watching her. "What ingredients do we have left?" she asked. Robert laughed coldly. "We've used everything worth using. There's basic pantry stuff. And eggs. Just regular eggs." "Perfect," Jennifer nodded, reaching for the carton of eggs in the refrigerator. Mary scoffed. "Eggs? You think Dan Wilson, who just rejected the finest caviar on the planet, will be impressed by eggs?" Jennifer didn't respond as she gathered her supplies. Eggs, day-old rice from the staff meal, green onions, a bit of soy sauce and cooking oil. The simplicity of her ingredients caused several chefs to walk away, already convinced of her failure. "Don't waste our time," Mary warned. "You can't make anything worthwhile with just those basic ingredients." Jennifer still said nothing as she heated a wok. With practiced movements, she cracked the eggs, beaten them lightly, and prepared the other ingredients. The kitchen had grown quiet now, curiosity replacing ridicule as Jennifer worked with unexpected confidence. She poured the beaten eggs into the hot wok, the sizzle breaking the silence. With quick, skilled movements, she stirred the eggs until they were just set, then added the rice. Each grain was coated with the egg mixture, becoming distinct and golden as she tossed the mixture with expert flicks of her wrist. A fragrant aroma began to fill the kitchen, simple but mouth-watering. It was the smell of comfort, of home-cooked meals shared with loved ones. Nothing pretentious, nothing complicated. Just perfectly executed comfort food. In less than 10 minutes, Jennifer had plated her creation, a simple egg fried rice, garnished with sliced green onions. No fancy sauces, no exotic ingredients, no architectural presentation. Just a humble, perfectly prepared dish that smelled like childhood and care. "That's it?" Mary asked incredulously. "That's your grand solution? Fried rice with eggs?" Jennifer nodded. "It's ready to serve, Ms. Chambers." Mary looked at the clock. 30 minutes remained of their 2-hour deadline. With nothing to lose, she signaled to one of the servers. "Take it out. At least when he rejects it, we'll still have time for one more attempt." The server carried the plate to the dining room, where Dan Wilson sat alone, scrolling through his phone with an expression of bored irritation. The plate was set before him without ceremony. Dan looked at it, his eyebrows rising slightly at the humble offering. For a long moment, he simply stared at the dish. Then, to everyone's shock, he picked up his chopsticks. The kitchen staff had gathered at the doorway, watching in tense silence as Dan lifted a small portion to his mouth. He took a tentative bite. Silence. Then Dan closed his eyes. When he opened them again, something had changed in his expression. "Who made this?" he asked, his voice suddenly soft, almost vulnerable. Mary stepped forward, confusion written across her face. A dishwasher, sir. Just a kitchen helper." Bring them out. Now. Mary's lips curved into a smug smile as she turned back to the kitchen. He's going to destroy her, she whispered to Michael. Probably wants to tell her personally how pathetic her attempt was. But when they returned to the kitchen, they were met with an astonishing sight. Dan Wilson's plate was completely empty. He had eaten every grain of rice, leaving nothing behind. The chef, he demanded again. Where is the chef who made this? Jennifer was pushed forward by the other kitchen staff, her apron still on, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Dan Wilson froze. His chopsticks clattered to the table as his eyes widened in disbelief. You, he whispered. Jennifer tilted her head, confused by his reaction. Yes, sir. I made the fried rice. What's your name? Dan asked, his voice strangely gentle now. Jennifer Mitchell, sir. The room had gone completely still, the tension palpable as Dan stood slowly from his chair. Jennifer Mitchell, he repeated, testing the name on his tongue as though trying to solve a puzzle. You don't recognize me, do you? Jennifer studied his face carefully. You're Dan Wilson. Everyone knows who you are, sir. A strange smile played at the corners of Dan's mouth. But you don't know who I am to you. Confusion rippled through the kitchen staff. Mary stepped forward, attempting to regain control of the situation. Mr. Wilson, if you enjoyed the dish, perhaps we could. Silence, Dan commanded, not taking his eyes off Jennifer. Jennifer, 1 month ago, did your parents contact you about an arranged meeting? Jennifer's face paled. How could you possibly know about that? Because, Dan said quietly, I am the man your parents arranged for you to meet. The meeting you never showed up for. Have you ever had a coincidence change your life? Share your story below. Gasps echoed through the room as the implications became clear. Jennifer's hand flew to her mouth. That's impossible, she whispered. They said he was a business associate's son looking to settle down. Not a billionaire CEO. Dan finished for her, a genuine smile now spreading across his face. Your parents honored my request for discretion. I wanted someone who would want me for me, not my wealth or position. Jennifer's mind raced back to the phone call with her parents a month ago. The arranged meeting she had flatly refused, determined to make her own way in life without their interference. The dinner she had skipped to work an extra shift at the mansion, never imagining that fate would bring them together anyway. When you didn't show up, Dan continued, I was intrigued. No one had ever turned me down before. I became curious about the woman who wasn't interested in meeting Dan Wilson. He gestured to the empty plate. And now I understand. You're authentic. Everything about you is real. Just like this dish. He ran his finger along the edge of the plate, collecting the last bit of rice. This is the first thing I've wanted to eat in 3 days. The first thing that didn't feel like it was trying too hard to impress me. Mary's face had turned an alarming shade of red. A dishwasher, she muttered. Beaten by a dishwasher with eggs and leftover rice. Dan ignored her, his focus entirely on Jennifer. I'd like to get to know you properly, he said. No pretenses, no arrangements. Just 2 people sharing a meal that doesn't cost a fortune but tastes like $1 million. Jennifer hesitated, her practical nature asserting itself even in this fairy tale moment. Mr. Wilson, I appreciate the offer, but I need this job. I'm saving for culinary school and... The $100 million, Dan interrupted. It's yours. The room erupted in chaos. Mary looked like she might faint. Michael and Robert began arguing loudly about the injustice of it all. Jennifer shook her head firmly. No, I don't want your money. Dan's eyebrows shot up in genuine surprise. You don't? No, Jennifer repeated. I want to earn my success. But... She looked around the kitchen that had been her workplace for 3 years. I think I'm ready for a new opportunity. Dan's smile widened. How about this? No money, but I'll help you find a place to live closer to the culinary institute of your choice, and I'll provide a recommendation for a scholarship. Your talent should be nurtured, not wasted washing dishes. 2 weeks later, Jennifer found herself looking for an apartment near the prestigious culinary school where she'd been granted a full scholarship. As she wandered through the unfamiliar neighborhood, she noticed 2 men watching her from across the street. Fear gripped her heart as they approached. Were they robbers? This neighborhood was supposed to be safe. Panicking, Jennifer dropped to her knees. "Please," she begged. "I don't have anything valuable." The men exchanged confused glances. "Ma'am," one said gently, "we're not robbing you. Mr. Wilson sent us to show you some rental properties in the area." Embarrassment flooded Jennifer's face as she stood up, brushing dirt from her knees. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought." "It's quite all right," the second man assured her. "This way, please. There's a particularly nice property we'd like to show you first." They led her to a charming townhouse on a quiet street lined with trees. When they opened the door, Jennifer was surprised to find Dan Wilson himself sitting in the living room. "What are you doing here?" she asked, genuinely confused. Dan grinned. "I'm considering renting this place too. It's close to my office." One of the men cleared his throat. "Actually, I should mention, there's a special rate for couples renting together. Half price on rent, and utilities are included for free." Jennifer's eyes widened at the significant savings such an arrangement would offer. Her practical mind immediately calculated how much faster she could build her savings with those terms. "Couples," she repeated, looking between Dan and the rental agent. "Yes," the agent confirmed. "You two are a couple, aren't you?" Before Dan could respond, Jennifer made a split-second decision. Propelled by practical financial considerations and perhaps something more, a feeling she wasn't quite ready to name, she stepped forward, stood on her tiptoes, and pressed a quick kiss to Dan's cheek. "Yes," she said, turning back to the shocked agent with a bright smile. "Yes, we are." Dan's expression was one of delighted surprise. This woman who had refused his millions, who had insisted on making her own way, was now play-acting a relationship to save on rent. She was nothing like anyone he had ever met. "Well then," Dan said, recovering quickly and slipping his arm around Jennifer's waist. "I guess we'll take it." As the rental agents busied themselves with paperwork in another room, Dan turned to Jennifer. "You know," he said softly, "this doesn't have to be just pretend." Jennifer looked up at him thoughtfully. "I think," she replied after a moment, "that whether it's relationships or cooking, the best things start with honesty and simplicity. No pretenses, no showing off. Just authentic ingredients and real intention." Dan nodded, understanding perfectly. "Like egg-fried rice that satisfies more than all the luxury food in the world." "Exactly," Jennifer smiled. "Let's start there and see what we can create together." As they stood in what would become their shared living room, both knew that whatever happened next would be built on something genuine. Sometimes the most extraordinary connections begin with the simplest moments of authenticity, whether it's a humble plate of perfectly prepared food or an impulsive kiss on the cheek. The story of the CEO who hadn't eaten for 3 days and the dishwasher who satisfied his hunger had only just begun. But already it had all the right ingredients. If you enjoyed this story about finding authentic connections in unexpected places, hit the like button and subscribe Genie Soul Stories for more heartwarming tales every day. What would your signature dish be if you were trying to win someone's heart? Let us know in the comments below.